My name is Nora Ellis, and I am 37 years old. 19 years ago, I was thrown out of the Magnolia Hill mansion with exactly 10 minutes to pack because I was 17 and pregnant. Tonight, my parents stand in the glass lobby of Seattle Medical Center, saying, "We're the grandparents of the head of cardiology, the same child they once called the stain of the Ellis bloodline." Life really does have a talent for rewriting what people thought they had erased. Before I tell you everything, if this story touches something in you, hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly want to hear it to the end. And tell me, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Because sometimes, karma also knows exactly when to arrive. The mansion back then was so vast that even the sound of rain seemed to come from somewhere else. The perfume my mother wore, the white orchid scent from Hermes, still floated in the air, blending with the polish on the curved wooden staircase. I stood there, hands trembling, holding the pregnancy test. The crimson hue of the two little lines stood out like a fresh wound. My mother set her teacup down on the porcelain table. The soft clink carried a cold finality. "Impossible," she said, lips curling just enough not to crack her Dior lipstick. The Ellis family was not born to become a joke. My father didn't look at me. He left the living room and returned a few minutes later with a silver Samsonite suitcase, the one they once bought me for summer camp at Stanford. He placed it on the floor, one step away from the door. "You have 10 minutes, he said. His voice was even, calm, and not loud. That calmness was what made me shake. "Why, Dad? Can't you don't?" He cut me off, removing his gold-rimmed glasses and wiping them as if erasing an invisible stain. Mother stood up and walked toward the family portrait on the wall. It was a Christmas photo, 4 people smiling brightly under the lights, wearing matching red sweaters. She turned the frame to face the wall and straightened it. Our family no longer has 4 people. The air thickened like curdled milk. I looked around everything once familiar, now absurdly foreign, the little Christmas tree still hanging ornaments, the Forbes magazine with Dad on the cover, the article titled, "The Ellis Legacy." They said I ruined it. All I saw was myself being erased from it. I went upstairs and stuffed a few clothes and photos into the case. From the drawer, I took the jade necklace. My grandmother had left me the only thing in that house that ever felt human. There was still room in the suitcase. I was about to add my notebook when my eyes caught the Ellis Tech Gala invitation taped to the mirror, "Innovation built on bloodlines." I laughed. For the first time, I understood they hadn't been speaking in metaphor. When I pulled the suitcase down the stairs, my mother was standing by the grandfather clock. "Don't call us," she said. Her voice was like ice cracking on a winter lake cold, brittle, and about to break. "We'll tell everyone you're studying abroad in Switzerland. Don't bring more shame. I'm still your daughter." "No," my father replied, quietly but firmly. "From now on, you're just a mistake to be forgotten." The clock struck exactly 9. The tick of the second hand fell into place like the sound of a chapter closing. I pulled my suitcase through the front porch. The Seattle rain greeted me as if it had been waiting. The wind slapped my face cold and burning, but more real than any of the fake embraces in that house. When I passed through the iron gate, the motion sensor light behind me flicked off. Darkness swallowed the stone path. That was the last time the light from that house ever touched me. I don't know how long I walked, only that my feet ached and the suitcase grew heavier as rain seeped in. At Ravenwood Park, I sat under a wooden shelter, breath fogging in the air. I clutched the jade beads in my hand, eyes closed, listening to the steady rain on the roof, a distorted lullaby, as I was about to drift off. Soft footsteps echoed on the damp boards, not the steps of a man lighter. Slower, but certain, a figure stopped before me, a black umbrella shielding most of the rain. The voice was low and warm, carrying the tone of someone who had lost more than once. "If you stay here 5 more minutes," she said, "I'll have to take you to the hospital for hypothermia." I opened my eyes and looked up at the stranger's face under the pale streetlight. Her eyes held something, calm, like the sea after a storm. "Get in the car," she said. "Stay here and you'll die." I looked at the hand she offered, aged with spots, but steady. Behind her was a black sedan idling by the curb. I didn't know who she was, nor why I trusted her. Only one thing was certain. No one had called me child in nearly 19 years. I took her hand, and right at that moment was when my life began to be rewritten. As the car door closed, I turned to look out the misted window, just as the lights of the Ellis house in the distance flickered out. The woman beside me gave my hand a gentle squeeze, her voice softer than the wind. "From now on, you'll never have to stand outside the door again." I didn't know her name, but I had a feeling she was the turning point that fate had sent. I gently closed the car door. The scent of real leather, mingling with a faint trace of lavender. Seattle's streetlights stretched into soft golden ribbons across the glass, reflecting the face of the woman driving. Her hair was streaked with gray and neatly cut, with a cream-colored silk scarf wrapped around her neck. The watch on her wrist showed 11:23. Its ticking hands moved steadily, like the breathing of someone too familiar with sleepless nights. I looked down at the folder already open on the seat beside me. The cover bore a matte silver logo, Whitmore Foundation, Teen Mother Assistance Program. In bold at the corner, candidate Nora Ellis. I inhaled. The blend of paper and lavender made my heart falter for a beat. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Someone who once lost a child," she replied, eyes still fixed on the rain-slicked road. Her tone wasn't sad. It was the kind of voice that belonged to someone who had turned grief into a daily routine. The car turned onto a cobblestone hill. Through the window, a sign glowed in the distance. Whitmore Manor brass letters aged with time yet softly radiant. The iron gates opened automatically, slow and smooth, as if out of respect for someone returning from a long journey. The house appeared out of the darkness, moss-covered walls, white-framed windows, and climbing roses still glistening with rain. Amber hallway lights fell over the stone steps, making everything strangely warm. I stepped inside. My wet shoes made embarrassed, squelching sounds on the polished oak floor. The air smelled of toasted bread and orange tea, the scent of a childhood someone had kept safe. "Give me the suitcase," she said. "My name is Maggie Whitmore." I obeyed, my hands trembling slightly. Why are you helping me?" She removed her scarf and hung it on the rack. "Because I didn't want to read in tomorrow's paper. Girl found frozen to death in Ravenwood Park." She turned, a faint smile forming enough to tell me her story went deeper than simple kindness. An old dog ambled out of the kitchen, fur gray, eyes cloudy but gentle. It sniffed at my feet, then lay down beside the fireplace as if it already knew me. "That's Finn," she said. "He chooses who gets to stay. Looks like he's chosen you." The room she led me to was upstairs. Cream-colored walls, thin lace curtains patterned with fading flowers, and on the dresser, a photograph of a young pregnant woman smiling at the camera. "Your daughter?" I asked. "Yes. Sophia. Car accident. 2000. Her voice was quiet, but in the pause that followed, I heard something break. Not loud, but deep. I set my suitcase down and hesitated. "If I stay, do you want anything in return? Just that you sleep one night without fear?" So simple a request, yet it caught in my throat like a sob. When she closed the door behind her, I sat on the edge of the bed, my palms still wrapped around the jade necklace. Outside, the rain tapped softly against the glass, like someone knocking out a lullaby. I don't know how long it took before I fell asleep, only that the last image in my mind was Maggie's eyes under the warm yellow light. Eyes that knew what loss truly meant. Morning came, the first sunlight after the storm slipped through the curtains, painting a thin ribbon of gold across the floor. Classical music floated up from downstairs Chopin. Nocturne No. 2. I went down. The aroma of fresh coffee cleared my fogged mind. Maggie stood by the kitchen counter, wearing a wool robe, her hair pinned neatly. Coffee, she asked. Yes, but how did you know I like it bitter? She smiled. No one your age likes sweet anymore. On the table, beside the cup, was a large envelope. The Whitmore Foundation logo embossed on the flap. Inside, a temporary job contract at Whitmore Bistro. Her restaurant. Can you work front desk? Server. Anything, as long as you don't give up. I bit my lip. I'm pregnant. I know. You can still work. A job gives you purpose. And with purpose, you stop seeing yourself as a burden. That line struck straight into my chest. Not painful. Just tearfully true. In the weeks that followed, I learned to wake early, make coffee for customers, and take orders with trembling hands. The people in the kitchen called me Miss Nora. They neither knew nor asked. The house became the closest thing to peace I had ever known. Maggie taught me to manage the inventory, to track expenses, and to say no without losing grace. Those who were once looked down on, she said, must learn to stand tall without shouting. One night, as I was folding tablecloths, she placed a hand on my shoulder. Tomorrow you'll see my doctor. He'll take care of everything. No cost. I nodded, throat tightening, not because of her generosity, but because of how natural it sounded, as if helping me required no justification. That February, Adrian was born in the middle of a snowstorm. The hospital lights flickered like falling stars. Maggie held my hand through 18 hours of labor, whispering old prayers under her breath. When the first cry filled the room, she laughed, tears falling. Though her voice stayed calm, "This boy will make the world remember your name." I looked at my son, small, red, his fingers gripping mine with a fragile yet determined strength. For the first time in my life, I understood that family doesn't need a birth certificate to exist. 3 months later, I returned to Whitmore Bistro. Apprentied, hair pulled back, Maggie handed me the keys to the cash register. From now on, I want you to learn how to run this place. No one understands people better than those who've been broken by them. Outside, Seattle's snow was melting. Sunlight poured through the window, hitting the jade pendant on my neck, its green reflection spilling over my baby's cheek as he slept in the cradle by the counter. I brushed Adrian's hair and whispered to myself, "This is our true beginning." That evening, while cleaning the counter, I found a small envelope tucked beneath the cash tray. On the front, it read simply, "Open only when you're strong enough to leave fear behind. Signature M. Whitmore." I held it in my hands, listening to the sound of rain returning against the glass. I didn't know when I'd be strong enough, but I could feel that inside that envelope waited the answer to the rest of my life. 10 years passed. Autumn in Seattle smelled of damp wood, crushed maple leaves underfoot, and the thin aroma of coffee drifting from small cafes around Lake Union. I still worked at Whitmore Bistro. Now, as the general manager, Maggie would joke, "You're the reason customers come back more than the food." I'd just smile. She was still healthy. Though her hair had turned whiter, her voice remained warm, and her eyes still saw through every defense I built. Adrian was 10 then. He wasn't like any other child I'd ever known. He had the habit of asking, "Why?" about everything from why bread rises to why people cry in movie theaters. Once, I caught him taking apart his teddy bear to fix its heart, stitching it back with the medical needle and thread Maggie had let him play with. She looked on, smiling. "He won't be as good a cook as you, Nora, but he might just save a few lives." That March, the snow melted early. The cherry tree outside Whitmore Manor bloomed late, its pink petals falling over the railing where Adrian liked to sit and read. He read adult anatomy books even though he was only 10. "Why don't you read comic books instead?" I asked. "If I know what's inside the body, I won't be scared when I see blood," he replied. His answer silenced me. Maybe he remembered the nights I came home late, hands still marked by small cuts from work. One evening, While I was reviewing the accounting ledgers, Maggie knocked on the office door. "I want you to meet someone." That someone was David Rowan, the attorney for the Whitmore Foundation. He was in his early 30s, with light brown hair, glasses, and a steady, unhurried tone. "Mrs. Whitmore says you're the heart of this restaurant chain," he said, shaking my hand. I smiled. "And you must be the one holding the paperwork together." He chuckled. "Fair enough, but the paperwork collapses without the heart." Maggie stood watching us with a gentle yet mysterious gaze. Only years later did I realize that very night, she had already begun preparing a future I couldn't yet imagine. As Adrian grew older, he became even more extraordinary. He took piano lessons, swimming lessons, and first aid classes. At 13, he saved a neighbor's dog from suffocating performing chest compressions in perfect rhythm. The story made the local paper. Maggie clipped the article and framed it in the living room. "For the first time in my life," she said, "I've seen a child turn kindness into instinct." As for me, once the girl cast out at 17, I now had a job, a son, and a home where people called my name with a smile. Sometimes, watching Adrian study, my heart swelled with both gratitude and fear. Fear, because I knew peace never lasts forever. When Adrian turned 16, Maggie fell ill, terminal cancer, something she had hidden from me for months. I found out only after discovering her chemotherapy schedule on David's computer. "She didn't want you to worry," he said. "She's my family," I replied, my voice breaking. In her final days, I sat by her bedside, holding her hand, listening to her weakening breaths. She squeezed my fingers and said clearly, "Nora, never fear closed doors. They only show you who's willing to open one for you." I nodded, tears soaking the pillow. "This foundation will be yours," she continued. "And his." She looked toward Adrian, who stood in the corner clutching the jade necklace I always wore. "Your son carries the light of 2 women," she whispered. "You and Sophia." That was the last time I heard her voice. Maggie Whitmore's funeral was held in the garden behind the house, surrounded by hundreds of white flowers. It didn't rain, yet Seattle still felt drenched, as if the city itself had cried. After the service, David handed me a large envelope sealed with gold wax. "From her will," he said. "Your son will be the first recipient of the Whitmore Trust Scholarship." I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Nora, if you're reading this, it means I've gone. I trust you to continue my work to make this place a second home for those who've been cast aside. Let Adrian see that compassion, not fear, is the only legacy worth passing on." Maggie Whitmore. Adrian entered Harvard at 17, studying medicine. Later accepted into a specialized cardiology program. I stayed quiet with the press, never once revealing the Ellis name. At 20, his face appeared on the front page of the Seattle Journal, the youngest medical prodigy in the state. Dr. Adrian Ellis, 20 years old, chief of cardiac research. I stared at the photo, my son in a white lab coat, eyes bright with confidence. The Seattle Medical Center logo behind him. My heart surged, pride tangled with something sharper. Like a quiet dread, David came to my side, setting a teacup on the table. Maggie said, "When the world learns Adrian's name, the past will come knocking." I looked at him and asked softly, "Do you think they still remember me?" He answered, "No one forgets the child they tried hardest to erase." That night, as I turned off the office lights, the phone rang. An unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. A woman's voice, polite but cold. "Hello. Is this Nora Ellis? We're conducting a special feature on Dr. Adrian Ellis. Could you confirm your relationship to him?" I stayed silent. The voice continued. Our sources say you once carried the Ellis name. Would you like to make an official statement? I hung up. Art pounding. Outside the window. Seattle's skyline glittered, reflecting my face, no longer the girl who'd been exiled, but still carrying the same old fear, wearing a new disguise. I knew then the storm was already moving in. On my desk, among the Whitmore Foundation paperwork, a strange envelope lay hidden between event invitations. Its cover bore the silver logo of Ellis Tech Industries. A short heading read, Re-exclusive interview and partnership proposal with Dr. Pridis. Adrian Ellis. Below, the signature Philip Ellis, founder and CEO. I stared at the name. The blood in my veins turned cold. After 19 years, the old door had opened again. But this time, I was no longer the one being cast out. The envelope from Ellis Tech Industries sat among the stack of charity invitations like a dark ink stain on white linen. Thick paper. Silva Ellis. Philip Ellis's signature in blue ink, the smell of fresh ink still sharp. Re-exclusive interview and partnership proposal with Dr. Adrian Ellis. Each word was carefully chosen. No please. No hope. Only proposal. As if I'd already sat in their boardroom and nodded. I'll respond, I said, keeping my voice even. David Rowan rested his hand on the chair opposite. Eyes fixed on the signature line. Respond in writing. Polite. Non committal. And keep everything. You think they'll stop? No. This is their first handshake. After this come the press. The gifts. The brokers. Then the lawyers. Lovers. They'd get there faster than I thought. The next day, the Seattle Journal aired a 3-minute feature on the youngest medical prodigy in the state. At the end, the anchor looked straight into the camera. We're reaching out to the doctor's maternal relatives, the prestigious Ellis family, hoping for a touching reunion soon. I turned off the TV. In the Whitmore Manor kitchen, the coffee smelled slightly burned. Down the hall, the Seattle wind slipped through the door cracks, carrying the damp scent of moss and wet wood. That evening, Whitmore Bistro was full. A middle-aged couple entered navy suit, tweed dress, and the trace of a classic perfume hanging around them. Their reservation read Mr. Pine and Mrs. Parker. I could have dismissed it except for the emerald-cut ring on the woman's hand, the kind Diane Ellis always wore during the holidays. I brought their wine to the table. Good evening. I smiled. Seattle's rainy this season. Would you prefer to sit closer to the fireplace? The man, Philip, looked up, his gaze cutting through me like a jeweler appraising a stone. We chose this table to watch the person in charge. He pressed on the word. In charge, like testing a surface for cracks. The woman Diane held the menu. Her nails painted a milky shade, lips curling faintly. It's so warm here. Warmer than a house on Magnolia Hill. I set the bottle down. The glasses chimed softly. Tonight's special is caramelized onion soup, something you might enjoy. Best served hot. I didn't look at them again. If you need anything, just call my name. Your name? Diane asked, her voice delicate as a thread. I'm Nora. I turned before her gaze could take root. They had found the right door, but they wouldn't enter by the handle. 2 days later, Adrian came home with a small box tied with ribbon. Mom. This came to my office. Inside a brand new Submariner watch. On the card, to our grandson, time is legacy. Send it back, I said, my voice dry. How Adrian frowned. I've never even met them. You don't need to. I pushed the box toward him. Legacy isn't something you wrap in ribbon. The next day, another gift, a fountain pen set, and a first edition of Grey's Anatomy arrived at the hospital. Adrian called me. They're not giving up. What should I do? Protocol? I replied. Forward everything to the hospital's gift department. Have receipts issued, and return to sender. Silence hung for a few seconds. Mom, Adrian asked softly. Are you scared? I looked out the window of Whitmore Manor. Seattle's sky hung low with clouds. I'm not afraid of gifts. Then what are you afraid of? Of the things people label as love to hide their true name. Gifts were just greetings. Their true name was pressure. By the third week, online headlines screamed, "The Ellis family rejected reunion." The wording was artful Diane's photo under soft lighting, and her quote about a youthful mistake and the wish to heal. At the bistro, the table nearby didn't bother lowering their voices. "Just forgive," one man said. "Family is family. No one's perfect." A woman added. I poured wine. The scent of Cabernet rose. Dry and sharp. David, sitting at the bar, watched me. They're testing public opinion. Don't let strangers' voices become your compass. You think I would? No, I just bring an umbrella when I see clouds forming. The rain came on schedule. Diane intercepted Adrian at a cafe across from the hospital. Security footage captured everything: her smile, the gentle hand over her chest, an actress rehearsed in her craft. "You look like your grandfather," she said, her tone warm enough to pass for affection. Adrian stepped back slightly. "Do I know you? I'm your grandmother, Diane Ellis." She lowered her voice as if sharing a secret. Her perfume drifted through the air. "Your mother misunderstood. I only want to make things right." Adrian managed to call me Mom. "Should I?" "No," I said. "Call security. Be polite, but clear. She's crying. You can hand her a tissue." I replied. "Just don't hand her your heart." When tears blur boundaries, law is the only thing with edges. That evening, a legal envelope sat on the Whitmore Manor kitchen table, the Cranford and Miles law firm logo embossed on the flap. David broke the seal. "Petition for grandparent visitation," he read, voice flat enough for me to hear the papers rustle. "They claim an unjustly severed relationship and invoke the child's best interest. The child who's 20. I laughed a brittle sound. Like dry wood splitting. "They don't care about logic," David said. "They're just testing the locks. We'll respond with the documents from 19 years ago, the ones they signed themselves." My fingers brushed the envelope edge. Suddenly cold. Outside, Seattle's rain fell faster, like someone knocking at the door. "Can I still protect him?" "Yes," David said, eyes steady on me. "And this time, we have a house to stand in." The next day, Ellis Tech sent another letter, this time directly to Adrian. I saw it on his office desk when I visited the hospital. "We invite Dr. Ellis to join the Ellis Tech Medical Advisory Board. Initial compensation, 6 figures. Media coverage will celebrate the reunion of 3 generations." Below Philip's signature, sharp as a blade, Adrian stood by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked city. "Mom, if I meet them once, would that be betraying you?" The question hit the floor like glass, not because it was sharp, but because it was clear. I stepped beside him. "You don't belong to anyone to be capable of betrayal. You belong to what you know is right. I don't want to become some victim story." "You never were," I said evenly. "You're the result of the people who chose to stay. When light shines too bright, people forget to ask where the power comes from." That afternoon, another unknown number called. A man's voice, deep and overly courteous. "Hello. Nora. I'm Martin Hale, communications consultant for Ellis Tech. I don't work with you. I just wanted to say, someone from your past will be contacting you soon. If you cooperate." This story could end quietly. "Are you threatening me?" "No." He smiled through the line. I could hear it. "Just a weather forecast. We all hate unexpected rain." That night, the bistro was quieter than usual. I cleaned the counter. The Edison bulbs overhead glowed with weary gold. David walked in, setting a thin envelope on the table. "From Maggie's old files," he said. "Found it today. I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note from Maggie, slanted handwriting. Faded blue ink. If the day ever comes when they return, remember those who left out of fear will come back under the name of making amends. Those who abandoned you will call it duty. You owe them no nod of acknowledgement. At the bottom, she'd written one final line. The next door that opens isn't for them to enter, it's for you to walk through. Head held high, I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket like a talisman. The next morning, an email arrived in the shared inbox of the Whitmore Foundation. Subject: Refamily Reconciliation Private Counsel. Sender: Ryan Carter. I read the first line and felt my pulse climb to my ears. Nora, it's been a long time. I'm working with the Ellis family under agreement to help you soften the story. We need to talk privately. I can help. I stopped there. Outside the window, Seattle's rain had suddenly ceased, the sky clearing like someone had drawn the curtains. I hovered the cursor over the signature line, Ryan Carter, Family Relations Consultant. Ellis Tech. Behind me, David asked quietly. What is it? I stared at the screen, fingers tightening around the jade necklace. My voice was low and steady. They just sold the past to the present. And I knew the next chapter wouldn't be about asking anyone to stop. It would be about how to strike back. The email from Ryan Carter stayed open on my screen, like a bruise that refused to fade. Refamily Reconciliation Private Counsel. Black ink. Smooth words. No bribe. Only phrases like, pave the way, shape the story, and reduce friction. The Whitmore Foundation office glowed amber on the wood desk. Outside, Seattle rain tapped against the window like a clock that didn't need hands. I forwarded the email to David Rowan with a short note. Preserve and hold. His reply came almost instantly. Pin it. Delete nothing. See you tomorrow. Then a follow-up. They call it reducing friction. I call it by its real name: coercion. The next morning, Vesper Hall Cafe hummed with jazz. The espresso machine hissing like a weary sigh. Ryan chose a window seat, leaned back casually, and the scent of woody cologne rose from his collar. You came. He smiled, one hand resting lightly on his cappuccino. Appreciate you making time for the grown-ups. I always make time for honesty, I said, placing my phone on the table. The screen glowed. Recording on. State law allows participant recording. I added, just to avoid misunderstandings. Ryan raised an eyebrow, the smile never wavering. Professional. I like it. This is simple, a few adjustments to the story. A few well-timed photos. And one exclusive interview. In return, Adrian gets a seat on Ellis Tech's medical advisory board. 6-figure consulting fee. Nothing ethically restrictive, so no conscience required. Oh no. He laughed softly. We call it brand alignment. A family reunion. People love happy endings. The kind of happy ending they meant was always the polished mouth of a trap. I touched the jade beads at my throat. The smell of roasted coffee thick in the air. Who do you work for? Exactly, Ryan shrugged. Independent consultant. But this week, for Philip and Diane Ellis, they want to stay ahead of the press, especially before the IPO, for the medical devices division. He slid his credit card onto the edge of the bill. The Ellis Tech. The logo flashed under the light. Simple strategy. He continued. Put Adrian on the advisory board. Stage a 3-generation photo in front of the hospital. And boost market sentiment. Everyone wins. Everyone, I echoed. You included. Ryan said, lowering his voice. Leaning closer. Not a bribe. Call it a family image consulting fee. Everyone needs a bridge to the future. The future doesn't stand on what once threw me out the door. I said, rising. This conversation ends here. I'm trying to help. Ryan insisted. I heard you. I replied, taking the check. And I just got what I needed. By noon, The Whitmore legal office smelled faintly of ozone from the scanners. David listened to the entire recording without interruption. Then he pulled a faded file from the cabinet. Relinquishment in perpetuity, the document my parents had signed years ago. Its key line reading, permanent forfeiture of rights to the undersigned and any descendants. Combine that, David said, tapping the page slowly. With Maggie's will clause barred from benefits, they not only lost visitation rights, they're legally excluded from profit. But they'll go through the hospital. I said, donations. Plaque. Advisory boards. Then we bring light into the room. David replied with a calm grin. People behave better when they know there's a camera. And the law, in the dark, words are weapons. In the light, documents are blades. That afternoon at Seattle Medical Center, the conference room's glass wall overlooked a rain-drenched parking lot. On the far wall, the Ellis name gleamed on a donor plaque. A hospital representative cleared his throat. Voice tentative. We just thought a short, supervised meeting might ease the media tension. I mend hearts, Adrian said evenly, meeting his gaze. Not reputations. What we mean is for the hospital's best interest. The best interest of this hospital, I interrupted, is for its surgeons to perform operations, not family theater. The representative glanced at David. He slid a folder across the table. The relinquishment document and excerpts from the Whitmore will. This is the legal framework, David said, and we intend to defend it. The silence that followed was long enough for me to hear the hum of the air conditioning. Rain drummed harder on the glass. Fine. Fast. Insistent. That night, another email from Ryan arrived. This time, an attached term sheet, 6-figure consulting fee, exclusive photo schedule, 3-generation interview content, commitment to appear at the Ellis Tech Summit. CC Philip. Diane. I replied with one line received. Preserved. No consent. David texted back. Good. Chain of evidence is clean. In the attachment notes, they had referred to Adrian as an asset class. When people assign codes to your child, you know it's no longer a family conversation, late at night. I opened the envelope Maggie had left me, the one I hadn't dared to touch since part 2. The paper was slightly damp. Her slanted handwriting faded to soft blue Nora. I don't let anyone teach our daughter how to name kindness. Kindness has no appendix. When you're strong enough to walk away from fear, you'll know you never needed permission to protect what's right. The desk lamp shone through the jade beads, casting a thin green line across the page, sharp as a blade. My hands stopped trembling. I called David. We're done defending. Finally, he exhaled. So what's the move? We'll give them their reunion story, I said evenly. In our place. Under our law. In the light. 3 days later. The small conference room in Whitmore Manor held the plans sketched on tracing paper. Stage layout. LED screen. Camera positions. Seating map for the Ashbury Terrace. David drew firm lines with his pen. This is our legal setup. Unified invitation wording. Filming consent notice. Liability disclaimer. And a stage for their own words to hang themselves. I finished. Not a trap. He corrected, smiling faintly. A frame so truth can stand upright. I wrote the invitation in fountain pen to Mr. Propus, Philip Ellis, Mrs. Diane Ellis, and Mr. Ryan Carter. You are cordially invited to the Ashbury Terrace to receive the portion of inheritance concerning Dr. Slashbury Terrace. Adrian Ellis from the Whitmore Trust. Documents will be presented publicly and transparently. Nora Ellis. The scratching of the pen faded into silence. Outside, Seattle had stopped raining. The sky looked like glass freshly wiped clean, so clear it reflected my own face. Send it, David said, and start the countdown. I clicked send. The read receipts appeared in sequence. Philip Ellis read, 8:47 p.m. Accepted. Diane Ellis read 8:48 p.m. Accepted. Ryan Carter read 8:49 p.m. Accepted. I leaned back. My heart beat steady but slow. The jade beads against my skin had grown warm. On the monitor, the Ashbury Terrace. The event reminder blinked like a surgical timer. In the corner, a new message popped up. Channel 7 confirms live stream. I turned off the office lights. Outside the door, the city exhaled into a rare, quiet night. Tomorrow, they would walk into a room believing they were about to receive an inheritance. As for me, I would give them the truth. Under a light they could never switch off. Morning of the gala, the Ashbury Terrace shimmered under white light. From the grand hall came the sounds of string instruments being tuned, heels tapping marble, and expensive perfume hanging in the air. Outside, reporters raised microphones, cameras flashing relentlessly, all gathered to witness the Whitmore Foundation Legacy Gala. Promoted as passing the next generation of legacy in medicine. No one knew that tonight. The legacy wasn't money. It was truth. Backstage, David adjusted his tie, his voice low. All cameras are live Channel 7's feed, and our internal system. Not a single frame will be missed. I nodded, touching the jade necklace at my throat. They're about to see what they signed 20 years ago. Adrian stepped forward in a midnight blue tuxedo. His face set, sculpted in resolve. I'm ready. In his eyes, I saw the same light I thought had died with my 17-year-old self, the light of someone who knows they are right. Outside, applause rose as the MC took the mic. Welcome, everyone, to an evening celebrating the legacy of compassion. The music swelled canon in D, soft and elegant. The crystal chandeliers cast liquid gold over the floor. At the front row sat Philip and Diane Ellis. Among the guests of honor, she wore a pearl satin gown and flawless red lipstick, her hand resting lightly on her husband's wrist, the posture of a woman convinced she'd already won. Ryan Carter sat beside them, phone in hand, glancing between the cameras. They look like people at their own funeral. They just don't know it yet. David murmured. I whispered back. Don't speak too loud. Tonight, truth will do all the talking. When the music stopped, Adrian walked up to the podium. The spotlight caught him. The mic carried his voice. Sharp and clean as a scalpel. Thank you for being here. Tonight, I'm not speaking about medicine. I'm speaking about family. The room fell silent. I was taught that family isn't where you're born. It's who stays when you're weakest. The person who taught me that was my grandmother. The woman whose name this foundation carries, Maggie Whitmore. Applause rippled. Diane Ellis joined in, smiling proudly, as though her name had just been spoken. And there's another. Adrian continued. My mother, Nora Ellis, who turned humiliation into strength and abandonment into legacy. I walked onto the stage as the applause grew louder. The spotlight burned hot, but I felt cold. In the front row, Philip Ellis nodded slightly, with the smug composure of a man convinced history was about to turn in his favor. I took the microphone. Thank you. Tonight, I want to share a part of the legacy you've been waiting for, the part concerning Adrian Ellis. I signaled to the technician. The LED screen behind me lit up. Then came Maggie Whitmore's voice, calm and resonant. If you are hearing this, it means those who once abandoned my daughter have returned. Family is not blood. It's who stays when you need them most. Those who left out of fear must not return under the name of redemption. I leave everything to those who choose love over pride. The entire ballroom froze. The only sound was Diane's sharp inhale, her hand trembling midair over her wine glass. I faced the crowd. Now, I'd like to present the original documents of the Whitmore legacy. David stepped forward, placing the file onto the projector. On the screen, words appeared clear and bold. Article 7, Section 4. Any biological family member who has abandoned or disowned Nora Ellis or her son shall be permanently excluded from all inheritance, property, or financial benefit from the Whitmore Trust. My voice stayed steady. And this is the second document. The projection zoomed in on the relinquishment in perpetuity, 2004. 2 signatures in blue ink shone on the screen, Philip and Diane Ellis. The music stopped. All I could hear was the slow, metallic beat of my own heart. Whispers spread across the hall. Someone murmured. They signed away their own daughter. The livestream camera caught Diane's face pale, lipstick blazing like a wound. David spoke into the mic. This is a binding legal document. They relinquished all parental rights and, under the Whitmore Trust, are excluded from any inheritance or familial claim concerning Nora or Adrian Ellis. Philip shot to his feet. This was stolen. It's invalid. I met his eyes. My tone calm. It was notarized, filed with the court, and sent by your own attorney 20 years ago. This is defamation. No. I said. This is light. Mini Hook Light doesn't ask for permission to shine. Ryan Carter tried to interject. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a misunderstanding. A media mix-up. David hit a key. The screen changed, displaying an email thread labeled 10% of assets recovered, followed by happy to help. Olivia always was emotional. If I push the right buttons, she'll cave. The room erupted gasps, shouts, chair scraping. Some guests stood to film, others walked out. Diane was crying now. Philip's face turned crimson. Ryan lowered his head, hands trembling. I lifted the microphone again. The Whitmore Foundation exists to protect those abandoned by their own blood. And tonight, before everyone watching, I declare this. Those who signed these papers are no longer my family. Not out of hatred, but because truth demands boundaries. Applause began hesitant at first, then swelling into waves. Stage lights hit the chandeliers, scattering white brilliance across the hall like a halo. In that moment, I felt no triumph, only peace. Karma isn't thunder. It's the silence when justice finds its place. Adrian stepped beside me, taking my hand. Mom, it's over. I squeezed his fingers and glanced toward the front row where Philip and Diane's seats now sat empty. On the screen behind us, the Whitmore Foundation logo glowed, followed by the words, "Family is not who gives you life, but who gives it back to you." After the gala, the corridor of the Ashbury Terrace gleamed with cold neon light. Reporters swarmed, microphones raised. "Mrs. Ellis, do you think they'll sue?" I paused, adjusted my coat, and made my voice steady. They're free to try. But in America, a signature is still a signature. David walked up, handing me a phone. Channel 7's live stream hit over 3 million views. Every recording verified. Copies backed up. I exhaled. Looking through the glass doors, the rain was falling again, thin as silk threads. Beyond, city lights shimmered red and blue against the wet pavement. From the end of the hallway, Ryan Carter hurried toward me, throwing out one last line. "You think you've won. Philip won't stop. They've got money. Nora and better lawyers than you realize." I turned, half lit by the hallway lamp. "Maybe," I said quietly, "but they've forgotten one thing this time. The light is on my side." I walked away, my footsteps echoing against the marble. My reflection, following in the glass, the woman once thrown out of her home. Now the one who made that same house bows its head before the world. The next morning, Seattle had no sun. The sky was silver gray. Lake Union's surface mirrored the city like a dull sheet of glass, reflecting a skyline still waking from a media storm. On the TV mounted in Whitmore Manor's living room, 3 major networks replayed the same clip from the night before. The anchor's voice was calm and deliberate. The video of Maggie Whitmore's final message has surpassed 8 million views. The court has verified the legal authenticity of the documents shown during the gala. Ellis Tech has not yet responded to requests for comment. On Twitter, number 10 Minutes Parents topped the trending list. A post with over 100,000 shares read, "They threw her out in 10 minutes. But it took her 20 years to reclaim her dignity, and she did it without raising her voice." I turned off the TV and stood by the window. A light drizzle fell. In the reflection, I saw Adrian making coffee calm. As always, perhaps he was more comfortable in an operating room than in the news cycle. "The press hounded you all night." "A few," he said with a shrug. "I told them I just did what was right for my patients and for my mother." I smiled. The perfect answer. Nothing more needed. Noon. Ellis Tech Tower. Emergency press conference. On screen, Philip Ellis appeared suit-pressed, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. "We are victims of a defamation campaign," he said hoarsely, trying to steady his breath. "The documents were forged. The video was manipulated. My family only wanted reconciliation." The glare from 100 camera flashes reflected off the sweat on his forehead. Beside him, Diane sat silent behind dark glasses. Behind them, empty seats, Ryan Carter was nowhere to be seen. A reporter called out, "Mr. Ellis, do you deny the signature on the relinquishment document?" Philip froze. I don't recall." 3 seconds of silence enough for television to freeze frame, and for the internet to do the rest. That afternoon, Channel 7 released leaked audio from Ryan's emails. His voice came through. Steady. "Mocking Ellis Tech wants to reclaim assets. That's how they refer to the daughter they kicked out. I just helped them rewrite the story. That's all." The broadcast cut to footage of Ryan leaving police custody. Wrists in cuffs. David Rowan stood beside me watching, saying nothing. "I don't want them in prison," I said softly. "Justice doesn't need a cell," he replied. "It just needs witnesses." Outside, rain poured heavier, the same kind as the night I was thrown out. But this time, my hands didn't shake. 2 days later, Seattle Medical Center issued a public statement. The Ellis Tech donor wall was taken down in front of reporters' cameras. The hospital director spoke, "We're grateful for past donations. But this hospital belongs to those who save lives, not those who buy their image." I watched from a distance as the bronze plaque was unscrewed. Fluorescent lights hit the pale mark left behind, faint, but visible. That blank space looked free. That evening, Ryan Carter called from the police station. His voice cracked. "Nora, they used me. The same way they used you. You can still choose silence." I said, "I know, but silence is guilt too. I have every recording. Every transfer order. I'll turn them in." I paused. "You're doing the right thing, Ryan." He gave a rasping laugh. "Maybe, for the first time." I hung up and checked the clock. The rain had stopped. A guilty man had begun redemption, and I had finished mine. 5 days after the gala, the Ellis Tech. The board convened on the 50th floor, glass walls. Gray skyline. On the screen, stock charts bled red. "We need a decision." One board member said. When the vote ended, the secretary read aloud. Motion passed. 8-1, Philip Ellis removed as CEO. Diane Ellis resigns from the executive board. Philip didn't react. He stared out at the mist-draped city, eyes as hollow as an unlit tunnel. The soft click of digital signatures was the only sound in the room. The door opened. He walked out. No one followed. A week later, Adrian and I stood before the press. The hospital lobby was packed. Reporters wanted a victory. Quote, "I didn't give them one. I don't rejoice in anyone losing everything," I said. In the end, my voice didn't need to shout to be heard. It spoke through their silence. Adrian added, We will not pursue criminal charges. Their silence now is sentence enough. That line was quoted everywhere. A top comment read, "Justice isn't revenge, it's remembrance." 3 weeks later, I stood before a new lakeside property. A silver sign gleamed, "The Whitmore Trust Center for Young Mothers." The scent of fresh paint mixed with coffee from the small kitchen, children's laughter filled the halls of the first classroom. I walked through the bright corridor, touching the clean white walls. "Maggie," I whispered. I did it. A little girl ran past. Giggling black hair. Brown eyes. "Miss Nora," she called. I bent down. Smiling. "What is it?" "Sweetheart." She tilted her head. "My mom says this place is like magic." I smiled softly. "Magic is made by people like your mom." Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting long golden trails across the wooden floor. Everything looked like a beginning. That night, I came home late. In my office, David was sorting papers, and Adrian slept on the sofa. On the desk sat a white envelope with no sender name. In slanted handwriting, "Nora, please meet me. Just once. D." He stood still. Outside. The rain had returned, whispering against the glass. In the reflection, my face looked older, but my eyes, calmer than ever. I didn't open the letter. I slipped it into the drawer and closed it softly. Sometimes, silence is the only answer large enough to end a chapter and light enough to begin a new one. 1 year passed. Seattle had changed seasons. The sky was now soft as silk after a night rain. Morning light streamed through the wide glass windows of the Whitmore Trust Center, painting amber streaks across the wooden floor. Children's laughter echoed from the classrooms below, blending with the scent of coffee and fresh paint, the smell of beginnings. I walked down the corridor where the walls were lined with photographs. Maggie Whitmore with her gentle smile, Adrian in his white coat, and at the end a frame inscribed with the words, "From the place of rejection, we built a refuge for the forgotten." The door opened, spilling light into the hall. A young woman stood there, hands resting on her round belly, eyes red and puffy. Her name was Lena. Just 18. Her family had thrown her out the day they found out she was pregnant. "Did you ever hate them?" she asked, her voice trembling. I looked at her swollen eyes, fingers twisting her shirt like she might vanish if she let go. "No," I said softly. "I only forgot how to forgive myself." She sniffled. I gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Here. No one asks if the baby inside you is right or wrong," I told her. "We only ask, what do you need to begin again?" Lena nodded, tears falling into her trembling hands. Sometimes healing doesn't come from advice, but from a touch free of judgment. That afternoon, Adrian stood at the podium of our first Whitmore Scholars Lecture. Below sat 12 students. Most were children of the single mothers our center had sheltered. On the screen behind him was an old photo of Maggie, her hand resting on my shoulder, taken in 2006. "My grandmother believed," Adrian said, "that every heart can be mended if someone is patient enough." Laughter rippled when he told the story of stitching his teddy bear's heart back together at age 7. I stood at the back of the room, watching him taller now, composed, his eyes shining with the same light Maggie once had. After class, he came down and whispered, "I applied to start a community health program in another state. I want to carry this legacy farther." I squeezed his hand. "You're not leaving, son. You're continuing." One June evening, David placed an invitation on my desk. Wedding. Whitmore Manor. Backyard. We wanted nothing lavish, just roses, an acoustic guitar, and candlelight. That night, the breeze was gentle, the sky painted in shades of gold. Adrian stood as witness, smiling the way Maggie once did. When David slid the ring onto my finger, I saw her face in memory standing in the old garden, smiling softly. "At last, you've allowed yourself to be happy." No loud music. Just laughter. The clink of glasses. And the faint scent of lavender in the air. We danced slowly on the grass. Moonlight spilling across David's shoulders. After everything, peace was the most expensive luxury of all. A few weeks later, a thick envelope arrived from the Oregon State Correctional Facility. The handwriting on it read, "From Ryan Carter." I opened it and read slowly. Line by line, I've confessed to everything. They call me an accomplice, but I think I was just someone who kept his eyes shut too long. Thank you for not hating me. When light shines long enough, even darkness learns to bow. I folded the letter and placed it beside Maggie's photo. Outside, a short rain passed. Droplets clung to the window, reflecting city lights beautiful enough to make me believe that maybe even mistakes can be washed clean. Then, one autumn morning, Diane Ellis returned not in person, but as a number. Accounting reported anonymous donation $250,000 for the medical scholarship fund. A note attached. For young mothers. So no one loses a child to their own pride. I read it over and over. No signature, but I knew it was hers. I sat still for a long time. Not joyful. Not resentful. Just soft. Like winter ice beginning to thaw. Forgiveness doesn't need an audience. It only needs honesty. That night, I wrote a letter but didn't send it. Mother, I'm no longer angry. Anger weighs like a chain. And I am tired. I remember your hand cold. Rigid. And wonder if it trembled when you signed your name. I haven't forgotten. But I've stopped carrying it. Maybe that's the only way for both of us to be free. I folded the letter and placed it in Maggie's wooden box, alongside her old ring and the jade necklace. The desk lamp reflected off the glass, showing the face of the woman I once feared, now changed. October. The Whitmore Trust Center turned 1 year old. The hall was full, people laughing, taking pictures. I stood at the podium, microphone in hand. Voice warm and steady. Thank you to everyone who still believes in kindness. This place wasn't built from money. It was built from wounds that healed. We weren't born to be perfect, but to learn how to love again after being hurt. Applause thundered through the hall, mixed with quiet tears. In the crowd, I saw Adrian standing beside the new sign, Whitmore Foundation Healing Lives. He raised a thumb, smiling the smile of someone writing a new chapter, needing no one's permission. When the ceremony ended, the lights dimmed. I stayed on the balcony alone. The city glowed in the distance. The lake shimmered like a field of fallen stars. The wind carried a trace of salt from the far-off sea. I closed my eyes, listening to the soft lapping of waves below, and whispered not for anyone, only for myself. At last, I'm home. Early morning. Seattle lay veiled in mist. I stood by the window of Whitmore Manor watching, the raindrops clinging to the glass as if they were trying to stay 1 second longer before slipping away. On the table rested a cream-colored envelope, its corners worn, the handwriting slanted and familiar. Meet me. Just once. D. I had kept it for months. Not because I feared seeing my mother again, but because I never knew what to say after everything. Forgiveness, sometimes, isn't words. It's the moment you no longer need them. Today, I decided to go. The cafe by Green Lake was still there, though renamed and newly painted. I chose the seat by the window, the one where she used to take me when I was little, back when we were still mother and daughter, before pride came between us. The air smelled of cinnamon and steaming coffee. A soft jazz tune played. The door opened. Diane Ellis stepped in, older than I remembered. Her silver hair was tied low, and her hands were trembling as she removed her gloves. No makeup. Just a small purse and a thin envelope. I rose. Not for an embrace, only a nod. Thank you for coming, she said. Her voice rasped. Weak, but real. I heard your center is doing well. better than I ever dreamed. I replied, but not because of hatred. Silence filled the space between us, the kind that comes after two people have run out of tears. Were you ever afraid? I asked quietly. Diane looked down, lips trembling. Every day. Afraid to look back. Afraid you'd see me for who I really was. I didn't answer. She placed an envelope on the table. This is the letter you wrote. 20 years ago. I never had the courage to read it. The seal was still intact. I looked at it for a long while, then gently slid it back. Keep it. You need it more than I do. Her breath caught. Outside. The rain fell softly, light reflected off the wooden table, making the envelope glow like an unspoken truth. No one cried. We just sat there, two women, one who once feared losing her dignity, and one who once feared never being loved, watching the raindrops race down the window pane. Diane rose. Thank you for coming, she whispered, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder, a touch that felt like asking permission. I nodded. Be at peace. Mom. She turned away, her small frame fading into the rain. The gray coat fluttered in the wind before vanishing behind the trees. I watched until her silhouette disappeared completely. In the glass, only my reflection remained. The storm inside me hadn't vanished. It had simply learned to rest, like water after the rain. That afternoon, I returned to Whitmore Center. Children's laughter filled the halls. Adrian was teaching a new group of students. When he saw me, he smiled, but asked nothing. Are you meeting the press today? No need. I said, they've seen enough. At my desk, I opened an old notebook and found a copy of the letter from all those years ago. I read it again for the first time without trembling. I haven't forgotten, but I've stopped carrying it. I forgive not because they deserve it, but because I want to be free. I closed the notebook and stepped out to the balcony. The night sea shimmered with city lights, waves whispering softly below. I smiled faintly and murmured into the quiet air. Justice ends where compassion begins. And sometimes, mercy is the loudest truth. The wind carried my words away along with the years I once mistook for weakness. Now, there was only me, a woman who had learned to stand in the light without needing anyone to bow beneath it. Epilogue, the Whitmore legacy. In the end, the Whitmore legacy. It is not just the story of one woman cast aside reclaiming her dignity. It is the story of all of us, the misunderstood, the unheard, the ones who tried too hard to prove our worth within families, relationships, or worlds that refused to listen. Nora Ellis learned that justice isn't about triumph, it's about living without fear. Forgiveness isn't denial, it's the choice to no longer let the past imprison you. We all have our own Elise's people who hurt us. Not out of cruelty, but out of weakness. And sometimes, the bravest act isn't to fight back, but to stand still in the light and let the truth speak for itself. This story reminds us that kindness isn't softness, it's the quiet strength that stops storms. That family isn't defined by blood, but by those who stay when you fall. If you carry a wound still unhealed, give yourself the chance to mend. Write your next chapter not for revenge, but to reclaim the peace that was stolen from you. And if these words reached you, I know this, you are not alone. Share this story if it touched you. Let it be a small light for someone still lost in the dark. Wishing you a peaceful evening and a gentle dawn.